Hello again. Welcome back. Now, we've all been there. You read a passage of scripture 100 times, and you're so familiar with the words that your brain just fills in the blanks. Take Acts chapter 16, for example. This is where I met a woman named Lydia. The Bible describes her as a seller of purple. For years, no decades, I just pictured Lydia standing in a marketplace with stacks of purple fabric. I didn't give it a second thought. Purple was just a color. But recently, I stumbled across a bit of information that stopped me in my tracks. It wasn't even from a theological source, just a random YouTube video on history. It turns out that purple wasn't just a color choice, it was an industry. The ancient world had what they called Tyrian purple. It was a status symbol, more valuable than silver. And it didn't come from a plant or a synthetic chemical, it came from the murex sea snail. To get enough dye for just the trim of a single garment, it took thousands and thousands of these tiny mollusks. They had to be harvested by hand, and the process to extract the fluid was labor intensive and frankly quite smelly. Because it was so rare and difficult to produce, purple became the official color of royalty and the ultra wealthy. Now, suddenly, my image of Lydia changed. She wasn't just a local seamstress, as I originally assumed. She was likely a high stakes businesswoman dealing in one of the most expensive luxury commodities in the Roman Empire. Now, why does this matter? In the grand scheme of things, knowing about sea snails doesn't change the gospel. It doesn't shift our understanding of salvation. But for me, it reinforced a valuable lesson about my own Bible study habits. I realized that I had been skimming the surface of Acts 16 for years. I had assumed I knew what purple meant without ever actually interrogating the text. I hadn't conducted a word study. I hadn't looked at the historical context of her city, Thyatira. I just assumed. And that's what gave me pause. If I can miss the depth of a simple word like purple, how many major doctrinal issues or theological nuances am I misunderstanding simply because I'm not asking enough questions? For this channel, I often spend time promoting or refuting heavy topics like eschatology or complex end times theories. But oftentimes, the learning comes from slowing down and looking at the trivial details. Proper exegesis isn't just for the scholars. It's for anyone who wants to hear what the Bible is actually saying rather than what we assume it's saying. So next time you're reading a familiar passage, I want to challenge you. Be like a detective. Interrogate the scripture. Do word studies. Look up the history. Of course, always identify the context. Because sometimes there's a gold mine of insight hidden inside a tiny sea snail. I'm out.